justices? Why aren't Supreme Court justices bound by the same rules as other federal judges? And inside the court, they are trying to work out what a code of conduct might say. Justice Elena Kagan gives a speech during this time saying, we're really close, but there are some final disagreements we're trying to work out. And yes, right at this moment, the Alito home in New Jersey is flying this flag that seems clearly over the line.
Okay, so what does Justice Alito have to say about this flag?
Nothing. He declines to respond.
Got it. Jody, the inevitable question here is, how do these flags fit into our understanding of Justice Samuel Alito?
So here's what we do know and what we don't know. Justice Alito is a very conservative justice.
Right.
One of the kind of twists of this current era on the court is that the justices appointed by President Donald Trump,
which we think of as so conservative,
are not as conservative as Bush justices like Justice Alito and Justice Thomas. Justice Alito is very open about his feelings about religious liberty cases. He is the justice who drove the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, and he authored that majority opinion. I mean, he is very clear about his beliefs and his opinions. But these flags raise, I think, a new set of questions about why two of his homes appear to be flaunting these beliefs in a kind of open defiance of all the norms of how judges should behave.
I'm curious what the response to your reporting has been. Once it becomes clear, I think, objectively speaking, that the raising of these flags seems to be at odds with ethical guidelines for federal judges.
There are some conservatives who have written it off.
What's the controversy here? Am I missing something?
Yeah, Kaylee, this is just another partisan smear against Justice Alito. He's under no obligation to recuse from cases because of a flag his wife flies.
No one besides the Times this week suggested that this was a symbol of insurrection.
You know, people who are judges on the Supreme Courts have personal lives, they have families, and I don't think they're necessarily responsible for everything their families do or say.
But also,
it is stunning.
There's been a lot of shock.
It's not enough to be a Supreme Court justice flying one MAGA battle flag at your house. You got to have two houses and fly two MAGA battle flags, one at each house.
He definitively needs to recuse himself from any matter pending before the United States Supreme Court that has to do with the January 6th violent insurrection.
In Congress, there have been a lot of calls for his recusal from the January 6th cases, especially.
In other words, he should not show up and vote on these cases.
Correct, because there is a law that binds all federal judges, including Supreme Court justices, on recusal, and a lot of people are saying this meets the recusal standard. There are even Republican senators.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened. You know, all I can say is it created a situation that we're all talking about.
Senator Lindsey Graham criticized Justice Alito.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake, but I'll leave it up to them to explain it.
But at the end of the day, the question is really what is happening inside the Supreme Court.
What do you mean?
Because one thing we know about the court is that it's essentially self-governing. They've created their own ethics code, but there's no enforcement mechanism. Right. Chief Justice John Roberts is the titular head of the court. He's the chief administrator. He's not really their boss.
Right.
So it's unclear that even if other members of the court think this was a really bad idea, if they can do anything to hold Justice Alito accountable.
So it's quite likely that the repercussions of having these two flags fly over these two houses of a Supreme Court justice will be absolutely nothing.
Maybe. I'm not ready to make a prediction on that yet, but I will tell you this. These two January 6th cases were already so fraught. These are so wrapped up in politics. They're about the last election. They're about...
Which features candidates who will be in the next election.
Exactly. Everything about the cases, even the timing, let alone the big decisions that the court makes about these two cases, will have political consequences because it's been clear that no matter what they decide on either of these two issues, the challenge of getting a broad swath of Americans to really accept these decisions as authoritative is immense. And these flags just don't make it any easier.
So is this kind of an open acknowledgement of something that we've known for a really long time, which is that the justices take pretty predictable votes on questions that are ideological? And is Alito basically just saying, let's dispense with the illusion that we are anything other than political actors in the judicial landscape? And I so don't feel the need to hide that fact anymore that I or my wife or both of us are just going to hoist a flag right over our house saying it.
Look, the Supreme Court has always been political throughout its history. There's no illusion about the way Supreme Court justices get appointed. But the commitment has always been to abandon partisanship at the door. That's what they all say they're going to do in their confirmation hearings. So my question for Justice Alito is, are you still committed to that way of operating? And my question to the court as a reporter is, well, once a justice appears not to be acting that way, what will the court do about it?
Well, Jody, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Evening meeting for today, May 28th, 2024. The board held its regular afternoon session at 3 p.m. today, followed by a work session and closed session. In the closed session just concluded, under item M, nothing was discussed except the matters which were identified in the motion to convene in closed session. Only those matters lawfully permitted to be discussed under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed. Is there a motion to adopt the certification resolution?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mrs. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes, thank you. Item N, public hearings and second reading of ordinances. Item N1, the petition of A.B. Boone Real Estate Incorporated to, 1, rezone approximately 16.27 acres of land from R3C medium density multifamily residential district with conditions to C2C high intensity commercial with conditions. 2, obtain a special use permit for mini warehouse on approximately 19.73 acres, zone C2C high-intensity commercial district with conditions. And 3, amend the proffered conditions on 32.323 acres of land zone C2C, high-intensity commercial district with conditions. And R3C, medium-density multifamily residential district with conditions, located in the 1300 and 1400 blocks of Edgebrook Road, Catawba Magisterial District. Chair welcomes Philip Thompson, Director of Planning. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you mentioned, so this it's a little bit complex. Do 3 things. Rezoning a portion of the property from residential to commercial, getting a special use permit for a mini warehouse on about a little less than 20 acres, and then amending the proffered conditions on the entire property. And mainly that's because there was a proffered plan previously that was submitted. Location of the site off of Edgebrook Road, just off of the exit 140 interchange off of Interstate 81 and Thompson Memorial. It's in the 1300 and 1400 blocks of Edgebrook Road, a little over 32 acres. Currently it's vacant. They are proposing mini warehouse, townhouses, and a variety of other potential commercial and office uses. This was previously rezoned in 2022 from R1 to C2 and R3. A couple photographs. Again, there's a little site of the part of the site's been graded previously. This is right across from the park and ride lot. And there's 2 different versions of looking at this from that vantage point. And this is the going around Edgebrook Road around the curve. And the property's on the right-hand side. So a little bit about this property, the background on this property. The original concept plan, when it was zoned R1, was the continuation of the fairways at Hanging Rock. There were approximately 93 single-family residents shown on this concept plan. As mentioned, in 2022, they came in to rezone the property. They submitted an original petition in February of 2022. Had a little bit more commercial. It was a hotel and then some additional professional medical offices, and not as much, and about 25 acres for townhomes. We had a community meeting in March where we had a lot of citizens in attendance, and they voiced their opinion. So the developer kind of put the application on hold, went back and came up with a revised concept. They moved the hotel location, only focused on the hotel, and also then, so the amount of commercial was a lot smaller, a little bit more acreage for the townhomes, which they were going to build 80 townhomes. Since that rezoning, they also have gotten approval, or went through the process of getting approval with a site plan for 50 of those townhouses. So this is the existing proffered development plan. Again, you can see where the hotel was, the light blue was kind of in the middle, and then townhouses were all around it. There were some areas that were protected that wouldn't be developed as part of this development. So, mini warehouse we defined as a building designed to provide rental storage space and cubicles, where each cubicle has a maximum floor area of 400 square feet. Each cubicle is enclosed by walls and a ceiling and have a separate entrance for the loading and unloading of stored goods. So that use is a special use permit in C2. Townhouses, a grouping of 3 or more attached single-family dwellings in a row, which each unit has its own front and rear access to the outside, and no unit is located over another unit, and each unit is separated from any other unit by 1 or more common walls. So townhouses are allowed in R3. The applicant, with this application, held a community meeting on their own. That was April 29th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the American Legion facility on Apperson Drive. There was approximately 14 citizens in attendance. I believe Supervisor Hooker attended that as well. And I think generally the reaction was pretty positive of the proposed use. So this is what they're proposing for their concept plan for this application. So the areas kind of highlighted in red is what would be R3. So you see the townhouses down on the circular drive. There's about 15 of those townhouses. They show a lot of areas that would remain protected or remain undisturbed or in a buffer area. The blue area is the commercial area. So you kind of see the light gray is kind of the original C2 zoning. So they would rezone 16.27 acres additional land for commercial, and then they would have a special use permit that would cover all the commercial areas for mini warehouse. All right, so commercial area A, which is the hotel and not the upper part of that, would only be for mini warehouse only. So it includes the proposed two-story self-storage building, and then the rest of the property that sits behind it. So it's a total of 16.27 acres. That would be the only use that would be allowed. For commercial area B, which in this photo, on this slide is the upper portion of 3.37 acres, there would be allowed several uses. So the office uses that would be allowed is general office, medical office, and laboratory. Commercial uses that would be allowed are personal services, general restaurant with no drive-through, retail sales, veterinary hospital or clinic, and again, they would allow mini warehouse on that if that was decided to go with that. Existing zoning, obviously it's C2 and R3 with the conditions from the previous rezoning. All the surrounding zoning is R1. As far as future land use, there are 3 different future land uses that are on this property. So development is a future land use where most new neighborhood development will occur, including large-scale planned developments which mix residential with retail and office uses. So a portion of the property is consistent. The townhouse portion is consistent with that, whereas the C2 and special use permit for mini warehouse is not consistent with that use. Core, again, it's our most intensive commercial use. Again, the proposed, some of the property that is going to be zoned for C2C and the special use permit for mini warehouse would be consistent with that. But the townhouse portion would not be consistent with the core, the future land use designation. So that area that's kind of closer to Edgebrook Road that's designated core that they show as townhouse is not consistent. Neighborhood conservation, this is where you typically it's single family homes, neighborhoods, and trying to protect that. The C2 zoning in that area would not be consistent with that neighborhood conservation. So part of it is consistent, part of it is not consistent. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 7th. There were 2 citizens who spoke. There was a citizen who had concerns about the buffers, his concern removal of the trees and the noise generated by Interstate 81. They already have that here, and so they were concerned about that. The other citizen was opposed to the project in general. Prior to the public hearing, there were 2 citizens who emailed comments to the staff. The first mentioned the green space located on the subject parcel, which is indicated not to be disturbed. And the second question, if the proper conditions would remain on the property, if the property was sold, it would remain, the proffers do remain on the property if it is sold. The Planning Commission discussed the project history, mini warehouse use, the buffers, noise, the community outreach that's been underway, the profit conditions, the surrounding zoning and land uses and the future land use. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the application with the 3 proffered conditions offered by the applicant. First one deals with the concept plan that the townhomes and the 2-story storage building shall be developed in substantial conformance with the Edgebrook Park Overall Development Plan, which is Exhibit B, dated March 22nd, 2024. That's been prepared by Balzer and Associates. No grading or development shall take place in the areas designated as existing vegetation to remain as buffer, stream buffer, or area to remain undisturbed as shown on the Edgebrook Park Overall Development Plan, dated March 22nd, 2024, prepared by Balzer and Associates, Incorporated. And then development of the remaining vacant areas of commercial area A and commercial area B shall be done in accordance with the applicable Roanoke County development regulations at the time of development and restricted to the uses stated in proffer number 3. Second proffer deals with building height, that the maximum building height for any structure shall be 45 feet. That's the building height in all of our residential districts. Proffer 3, the property shall be limited to the following uses. For commercial area A, just mini warehouse, only. Commercial area B, the office uses would be general office, medical office, and laboratory. The commercial uses would be personal services, restaurant, general, no drive-through, retail sales, veterinary hospital, clinic, and many warehouses. And with that, I will take any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've
Ms.
got
Sugar.
a couple of things. There's a lot of history on this board with Planning Commission, and there was some commentary about some future land use. Could you give just a quick overview of future land use designations? Are they intended to be hard, fast lines?
You know, with anything, I think they're a guide, right?
It's a
It's a
guide.
future land use guide. It's trying to help you, when you look at the comp plan and you look at future land use, they're one of the factors that you should take into consideration when rendering your decision. Again, in this case, part of the development is consistent with the future land use designations, and part of it is not. Now, again, I think you have to weigh some of the public input. I do know when we had the first rezoning, there were a lot of citizens who were not happy with the hotel use, right? And I think the developer, the applicant in this case, wanted to try to find something that was a little bit less intensive. And I think I think you are aware of, he's met with citizens and trying to get their input as far as what they would find acceptable. And so I think he's gone through that process, and then this has led him to this application.
You know, I was involved with the Planning Commission for a number of years. I don't think I've ever worked with a petitioner who went through the process like this petitioner has seen. And it's really been amazing to me personally what they've gone through, and they're still coming back. And so another question, if you go back to slide number 16, please, if you're able to do that. And on slide number 16, we see that in the corner, in the lower right-hand corner, Mr. North, I wanted you to see this too, is where they're talking about the townhouses and where they will be. It's currently in red, which is for the core designation. It's my understanding, we'll talk to the petitioner about this later, but that's going to be on hold, I think, for now. I don't know, if you go up one more slide, I believe is the rezoning. See, it's already zoned R3C. Mm-hmm. It's included because of the conditions, is that correct?
The previous one, correct.
Right, okay.
The previous rezoning, it was zoned for R3. So in the previous action, that portion was not consistent as well.
Yeah, right, exactly, because of it being in core.
Correct.
Understood. Okay, and let's see, there was something else I was going to. I think the rest of my questions are for the petitioner, so I think I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Bradford? Mr. Honey?
Nope.
None here, Mr. Thompson. So at this time, I'd like to invite the representatives for the petitioners to speak if they wish to. And Mr. Boone and team, welcome. And board, do you have any opening statements, or do you wish to take questions now?
Just brief opening statement, if you will. Good evening, supervisors. I'm excited to be here. And first, I have to tell you, I appreciate all the time you spent on this project for a long time. I mean, I recognize that this is, as Vice Chair Hooker said, it was an unusual one. It has gone through the process. And thank you for working with us and for your patience. The way I look at this is I appreciate the opportunity to present Edgebrook Park, the sequel. You know, the sequel is rarely better than the original, but in this case, I think the original is in the past, and we're moving forward, hopefully, towards the sequel. And I have to appreciate and give credit to Vice Chair Hooker and appreciate her involvement with the citizens and with us and our team to try to come up with a better proposal for this site. So when you first look, if we could look at the currently zoned plan of development. Let's see. Certainly, we've all seen this before, and Mr. Thompson reviewed it. So while hotel and townhomes were very good uses under the future land use, I mean, we believe that it qualified and met all the classifications and the requirements for neighborhood development and core. In the aftermath of the highly contentious rezoning process that we all went through, I just thought to myself, is there a better way to work with the neighborhood? Can we do something that makes sense for Roanoke County, that makes sense for us as developers, and serves a community need? And after a lot of thought, I knew that there was a need for high-quality, new storage facilities, and certainly you see them across the country. You know, we're fortunate to have such a strong local company, locally owned, locally founded in Virginia Varsity Storage. And so I wanted to talk with my close friend John Luger about a facility at this site. But it had to continue to maintain the strong buffers that we had, and it also had to have low traffic, because those were the big issues. So I met with John and Virginia Varsity Storage Vice President Andrea Minnick on the site, and after I described exactly how it would be graded, what the visibility would be, and certainly the obvious access to 81, they said, "This is great. Love it. This will be a perfect site for what we want to do and the way we want to work with our customers." Well, at that point, we, with Vice Chair Hooker's assistance, we got a group of citizens together and actually had small group meetings where we met with some of the most vocal opponents of our presentation and our project. And that was really interesting, to sit down at a table, in a small table, small room, and go through where we had been and where we wanted to go, and that we wanted their input. And it was interesting because at first people were a little nervous about each other, not quite sure, could they trust me, could they trust John and Andrea? But after a while, we really developed a great relationship. Even the first meeting, we were there for an hour and a half, and at the very end, I mean, we were engaging in great conversation, different ideas. I mean, I talked to him on the phone, we emailed, we shared different ideas, and what we came up with was what Mr. Thompson showed, again, breaking it down into areas A and B. Number one is, of course, the storage facility. B would be, and this was a point of a lot of discussion, I mean, over months and months. And this process went on for 6 or 7 months. And we had a number of meetings and lots of interaction. But finally, we agreed the north part of the property, commercial area B, is an unusual piece of property because of its visibility from the interstate and the access. And to Interstate 81 and the park and ride. And there's so many things that we talked about that we could do. We looked at residential with the neighbors. We looked at commercial and the various uses. Ultimately, it was interesting is they really didn't want any more residential there. And as we talked about with the townhouses, but so we agreed on general office, medical office, and laboratory, as well as the personal services, restaurant, and I say this sort of tongue-in-cheek, but clearly no drive-through. They were very clear that there was not to be a drive-through at this site. Retail sales to support the neighborhood, veterinary, hospital, or clinic, and again, storage or self-storage if we can expand the operation. So they all supported these uses. They thought that they were neighborhood friendly. They thought that the conditions and the proper conditions that we offered met all their requirements. So we're excited to present this to this board for adoption. So this time I'd like to introduce my friend and partner, the founder and president of Virginia Varsity Transfer and Storage, John Luger, for a brief presentation of our proposed development at Edgebrook Park.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be before you. Thank you for your time and attention. Also want to thank Chair Hooker and the groups and everyone who has helped assist in this process throughout the way, from the community meeting and the neighbors who were involved, the Roanoke County planning staff. We really appreciate all the assistance and help and guidance there. And Balzer and Associates, certainly, with Chris Burns and crew as well, and Dan Chitwood with some of the renderings. So we have actually opened our business and founded our business in Roanoke County in 1988, about half a mile from here, when I was living in Stonehenge with my mom and brother. So I've come a long way. Great to be back here. So let me advance this here. So this is just a quick slide about our company. We started a moving company in 1988. Actually, this month we turned 36 years old, if my math is correct. We started our Starkey storage project in 1999 behind Greenbrier Nurseries and opened actually in May of '99. We have about 50 employees, depending on the time of year, 5 storage facilities. We are actually working on one, Mr. Boone and I, in Christiansburg, an expansion. We bought the original in 9 years ago, and we're expanding significantly now with some neat innovations. We're based in Salem, and we are nationally and locally involved in our businesses, both from serving on the associations. I'm currently the president of the Self-Storage Association of Virginia. So we're different than a lot of storage companies. We're long-term operators. There are different types, and not to say one's better than the other, but we're in it for the long haul. These are our properties currently, and it shows how many years we've owned them. So 25 years for Starkey, down to Franklin Varsity Park, which was the old Graves Humphreys building. We bought the property and built a Class A facility behind it. So it's actually a 2-building complex. It was profiled in the Self-Storage Association's magazine on the cover, where there are 60,000 facilities in the country. We felt that was a real honor. We've evolved how we do things since we've been able to and have the ability to, and continue to be obsessed with quality and doing things in a better and better way. As a neighbor, storage is a great neighbor, and people have asked that, and we have several properties that are close to neighborhoods. The top left picture here is our Bottom property in Bonsack. It's next to basically the orchards and all those neighborhoods. There are homes right above us. It's heavily buffered with a grade change, not too dissimilar from Edgebrook. The bottom left corner is our original property, Starkey, and we have neighbors behind us, and we have a quarry in front of us, and a whole variety of things. But we allow buffering and the way you orient the buildings to really help separate and provide a place where you can coexist very happily. The bottom right is Cambria up in Christiansburg, near the Farmhouse Restaurant, 2 doors down. And this is in the most densely built residential area in the New River Valley. And we're actually expanding on the vacant land just up from that picture, the circle. It's under construction, close to completion. And we're adding all kinds of landscaping and really nice features on both the front and back for buffering and aesthetics and uplighting and that type of thing. We really try to do things a different way, and we're obsessed with quality. So here are a few things to show sort of the concepts with where we are. And we are still tinkering, but to try to make it better. But this is an orientation, a watercolor that Dan Chitwood did for us that really gets into the orientation of what we're proposing as a bi-level building, which is a 2-story building, like a house where you have a slope change where the front door, first floor, and the basement levels have direct access out. It's a more efficient way to add additional square footage without eating up unnecessarily additional land. You can give it a little more prominence, a little more presence to how it looks. We've done a 3-story at Varsity Park. We've done a lot of single stories. We've done bi-levels, but this would be a feature bi-level building, and you can do some things with it that are kind of unique, which I'll talk about. But it shows sort of the relationship of where this will be compared to the park and ride, the interstate, and Edgebrook Road passing by. So it's not perfectly to scale, but it should give you a sense. Moving on and digging in a little bit deeper, this shows a little more detail in the concepts we are evaluating and working on. And so obviously to the left is the park and ride. This is a shot from 30,000 feet, say, looking down at the building, which would be a 2-story building of about 50,000 square feet, 25,000 square feet per floor. It would have the office oriented towards Edgebrook Road to receive customers as they come in. We would work through traffic flow and gates and lighting and fencing. We are obsessive, and again, Ms. Minnick here She's been with us 16 years. She's a catering graduate, phenomenal manager. And she's quite a stickler. Wonderful customer service, but we expect things from our customers too, like to pay us on time and to keep things orderly and clean, don't disturb people. And we don't allow for any shenanigans. Our hours are also, a lot of people think are 24 hours a day, which we think is the worst idea ever. That's a misconception. We believe in much more restricted hours, and we hold to it. So if people don't follow the rules, they are asked politely to leave, frankly. So a couple of the renderings here, the top right of this, you can see the front elevation, which is basically facing the driveway coming in the property. The rear elevation would essentially be a two-story building on that side. And so you also have the end of the building that you would see facing Edgebrook, and that's the one on the bottom with the interesting roofs. And we've talked about some additional non-storage amenities to be part of this, which we've started to introduce at some of our other properties, like small meeting rooms or individual pod workspaces, especially with the proximity to the park and ride. We're still working on some neat ideas. We've done a lot of these at Varsity Park down by River's Edge. Anyone's welcome to come visit, but we are always trying to innovate and make it better for our customers and potential customers. So that is a quick primer. Any questions before I hand it back off to Mr. Boone?
Any questions?
I'm going to wait till the end.
Okay, very well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I got a question for you.
Sure.
This facility down Starkey Road, in 1993, was that your facility or did you buy it from somebody else? Or was it under another name?
We've never changed our name. We bought our land from Greenbrier Nursery, so you have to go through the side of Greenbrier to get back.
I used that facility in 1993 and 94.
Is it up on the hill, or is it next to the barber shop?
It's just down here on the right, I guess, near the nursery.
It must be, I think it's Starkey Road, self-storage, across from the child care.
Is that still there, or do you own that?
It's still there.
Oh, well, I didn't know.
Yes.
I thought you bought it, so.
Well, we have room for you down the
Well,
street.
I hope not to have to use it again. That was a time of transition, but it was a good facility. And your facilities are good too, because I visited them and you did some out-of-town moving for me. So you'd have a good company, and I had a good experience. Yeah, Ms. Shepherd.
You can call me anything you want today. I do have a quick question.
Yes.
So looking at this, the skybox, I'm assuming those are the meeting rooms you're speaking of?
Yes.
How large are those?
We did 5 skyboxes. Now, we might call them something else. At Varsity Park, where our building is, we built on the parking lot of the old Graves Humphrey. So
Yes.
you're right at the fields, you're looking right at Roanoke Memorial, Mill Mountain. And so when we were building that on the second floor, we built a 3-story building. On the second floor, as we started to build it, we realized those views are just mesmerizing. They're amazing. And so we decided to take 5 spaces. And so there are 3 are 100 square feet, 2 are 150 square feet. We're just adding 4 more that are about 120 square feet. So they're meant to be little hobby spaces, workspaces, people, maybe a doctor from the lake that needs to work on their charts. Someone we have an artist in there, we've had a nonprofit. It's just really meant to be a hobby space or a workspace or collaboration space. And so we're looking at something like this, but anywhere from 100 square feet to 200, maybe a little more.
Are they rented like on a monthly basis, a daily basis?
The ones we have currently at Varsity Park are rented monthly with a 6-month lease because we feel like they are very much in demand and we want a sense of community, and that's been successful. Here, you could probably go a few different routes. We want to make sure we have it right before launching it, but you could see, because our team has used the park and ride to meet and then go to Greensboro, go to Charlotte and go on a storage mission or whatever, but it'd be nice to come back somewhere where you could step inside and have coffee and do some work. So you could see possibly there being some that are longer term rented, but maybe also by the day or by the week. If you have Virginia Tech faculty coming down, they're meeting people in Roanoke, it's a convenient place to work. So we're open to that for smaller individual spaces, but also maybe a larger space. We're actually just putting a community room in our Christiansburg project, the big expansion up there, for the POAs to be able to use. Now, we need to work through the details of how all that will work, but it's going to be big enough. There'll be a TV screen in there. It'll be big enough for about 15 to 20 people, for a private space, and we have it built so we can, when we lock the office at 5:30, which is our normal closing time, they can sort of stay in there and they can exit. There's additional parking we did for it, which is partly the reason we have some additional parking here too, to allow for some of these other things. Storage is great, but it's kind of passive. And when we did Varsity Park, we wanted to do more for the community than just be a place to store things, hopefully for a very long time, if that helps.
Like, your facilities always look great. I'm around them all the time.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's important to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions before?
No, that's a niche market that's in high demand, I'll have to say, in the Highlands District too.
For sure, for sure.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? No more? Okay. At this time, we will,
I think Alexander wants
oh, okay, Alexander, you want to finish up?
One item that I think we want to address, and Vice Chair Hooker asked the questions about future land use. And while our proposed use does not satisfy, or the current use satisfied the future land use for this property, our current one, it does satisfy core. The proposed use does not satisfy the neighborhood conservation and the development designations, really because the neighbors strongly opposed the uses that would satisfy it. You know, we talked about single-family residential housing that was not viable in this site. The prior owner from which I bought it, tried it. It was unsuccessful initially with some marketing. And so the only things that would work here are high-density townhomes and apartments, and we all know how they were received. So because these didn't work, we went to other options to come up with viable uses for this property. And we believe that with the flexibility that the future land use offers, is that we think that this should be hopefully acceptable to this board. So we appreciate the opportunity. We continue to make substantial investment in Roanoke County. We think over time this facility and the potential retail or office or laboratory or expansion of storage will meet or exceed the investment that we talked about last time. And so we respectfully request that this board approve our proposed plan for Edgebrook Park, the sequel.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to answer any questions. And for John.
Any more questions from the petitioner?
You know, I have several comments, but they're really not questions, so I might wait
Okay.
on these comments.
That's good. I got Mr. Mahoney.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Boone.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mahoney.
I am concerned about the inconsistency with the comprehensive plan, but I appreciate your argument in terms of what the people who live in that neighborhood want. And you are correct. They don't want what would be otherwise consistent with the comp plan. When I look at commercial area A of 16 plus acres, are you and Mr. Lugar looking at, as the future develops, putting more mini warehouses in that whole area? Or are you looking at keeping that unused?
We want to see what the market supports. We're going to test the waters, if you will, but it's really hard to test the waters with a 50,000 square foot building out of the gate. But we know from the market studies that we've had done that there is sufficient demand to support those, but we want to see what's going to happen later. So one of the uses that we're going to evaluate is RV storage on that back area, and the neighbors were supportive of that because we need to grade it as part of the site balancing that Mr. Burns can address. And so as part of grading, we'll have area back there, and certainly at that point, we would not be ready to expand for storage. And so we've looked at expanding the RV parking depending on the initial reception we get to it. And as you can see, it's next to the main facility. What we think we'll do over time is build smaller storage buildings on that back property where they'll be shielded from the neighbors. But it would, as we were saying, we've limited that back portion to storage only. On the other side, parcel B, we want to see where the market goes. How do we do retail-wise there? How do we do traffic-wise? You know, what's the do we get people from other areas? What's the reception from people with the park and ride? I mean, what we'd really like to do in a perfect world is expand the storage in the rear part, and again, that's the only use in our profit conditions. And then use the storage use the land on commercial area B for either office or really ideally would be a retail center. And that's the ultimate goal.
No, clearly, commercial B is probably the most out of step with the comp plan. But at least when I was driving out there and looking at the site, it seemed that it addressed traffic issues better than being, I don't know more to the south or to the west of the site.
Yeah, the neighbors are very concerned about any type of commercial uses back behind there other than storage.
I guess my thought would be in terms of where the existing mini warehouses are now, that would be roughly 3 or 4 acres, and so that the remaining area of commercial A would remain townhouses. But in your discussions with the citizens, they didn't want townhouses there at all.
At all, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't build them. It just, when the Virginia Varsity builds a facility, like John said, they're really built for the long term.
Sure.
And when you look at their Botetourt, Starkey, and other facilities, they start with a smaller facility, although in this case, this will be a large one. And then they grow into it to meet the demand and the need of the market. And so John really and Andrea really want to have the flexibility to expand on the rear part of commercial A. And then I think most of B is actually in core for commercial use. You get into some neighborhood development as part of it, but part of it is core, which would meet the retail.
I guess I was looking more at the remainder of commercial A, and I'm hearing what you're saying is, let's see what happens with the existing proposal and with the possibility of expanding that in the future if the market supports that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just a follow-up comment for
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mahoney. Alexander, a tribute to you for your heart feeling that it wasn't a good fit. You went back to the community, you partnered up with John. I mean, that's a great business model. And I agree with you. With John, you got to take a small step to see if the business model is going to work, and then you can figure out what to do in B and then the other part of A. So, kudos to you for doing that. I mean, that's what it's like to be a risk taker. You have to go out and you get criticized for it. You regroup, you go back out with something else, and boom, you just never know. So, great job. I wish y'all all the success with that.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'll make a few comments. Number one, I personally have watched this from the side, and I've been talking to Ms. Hooker. She keeps us posted on what's going on, and it seems like this is a very methodical, patient approach. You didn't let the decision of the past impact what you were going to do. You regrouped, and that's something to be noted. I wish more people took that approach, and if they do, I wish that it would be shared with us, because I'm not so sure that's done around the area in your line of work. You go to the meetings, you're seeing, people know who Alexander Boone is, and so I think that's a testimony to best practices going forward.
Thank you, Mr.
And I'll just tell you something else, too. I may not have the planning background that some of these members up on this board do, but I can tell you one thing. You have to change with the times in the market. And if this comp plan isn't attracting things that it was designed to do, you got to be flexible and fungible and change. You can't be held restricted in all cases, because I think you're demonstrating that right here. So, good presentation on both you and Mr. Lugar.
I appreciate it. And it's difficult because developers and residents aren't always going to see eye to eye, and they're likely to not see eye to eye more often than they are. But I think the lesson here is to sit down and talk instead of yell, and listen to each other's concerns and see what can work. And in a lot of cases, we're not going to be able to meet the needs of the homeowners. But in this case, because this is such a unique site, we could, and I think we have, and I hope we're able to move forward.
Absolutely. In the community meetings, like you demonstrated, and even going by in some of our work, knocking on the door rather than email and making a phone call, has a lot larger impact and is noted and accepted, and it gives people People really just want to be heard. That's
Yes.
all. And then once they're heard, next thing you know, they're working with brainstorm ideas like you demonstrated as to what ought to go there and what have you. You can't put a price on that kind of a business discussion. So, you know, you should probably be at Virginia Tech's real estate school talking to how business is done to some of those students.
I'd like to do it one day. I've got
Yeah.
too full of a plate these days.
Yeah, well, you'll probably get a phone call tomorrow if they're listening to this. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. North. Any further questions?
No, don't think so.
Thank you, thank you.
At this time, we will open the public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to speak? Okay, at this time, then we will close the public hearing. With that said, is there a motion?
So
on the petition?
I have several comments. I've
Okay.
waited patiently while I've listened to you all give some
Okay.
accolades, and I want to wrap up some of my thoughts and commentary, and then I'm happy to make a favorable recommendation. I'd like to just go back and say that this wasn't just a good business decision to do what they did. It was, but it was a brave thing to do. The kind of backlash that they received, I wouldn't blame them if, they just kind of washed their hands and walked away, but they were brave and they took on a demeanor of saying, let's talk to the people and see what's really going to work best. And then let's research how we can do something that's still viable and profitable, meet with the citizens who are very concerned, and, have that face-to-face dialogue is not an easy thing to do. And they did it. They were patient with them. They brought forward new ideas, and they tested, what their thoughts were. I think that they were really smart in showing Varsity Park, because we all walked around in there and they saw these, the typical storage areas, but they showed the cleanliness, they showed the surveillance, they showed that it's has someone at the desk. This was just a special place. And then we go through and we look at the community rooms and the small office spaces and space in Varsity Park where you actually have police officers who can come in and write their reports. So there was this attitude of what a great service they were offering the community. And I think that you were really brilliant in taking them there to kind of show your work and to set the dream in motion. When we were looking at some of the community rooms there, we were envisioning that some of these community rooms at Edgebrook, it might be for a neighborhood baby shower or for a Super Bowl party, that it's a place where the community could gather, and I think that really helped to get the buy-in. When I look at the future land use issues, I do see it as a guide, Mr. Thompson, and I appreciate the concerns that have been expressed. I think that Mr. Boone was spot on, that sometimes the community gets it better than we do. And I think that was the case in this point. When there was the mention of the RV storage, and I really appreciated the part of the packet that talked about they would be put in such a way that it's really not visible to any of the homes in that area. And they're very amenable to that. And so I appreciated their work with that. The traffic study was very thorough, still came back with a grade A. So for all of these reasons and more, I'm going to go forward with my motion to approve, and I'll go ahead and read that motion, and then if there's more discussion or any other commentary, I'm sure it would be the time to hear it. It says, I find that the proposed special use permit meets the requirements of section 30-19-1 of the Roanoke County Code, and that the proposed special use conforms with the standards set forth in Article 4, Use and Design Standards of the Roanoke County Zoning Ordinance. is partly in conformance with the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan and partly inconsistent with the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan, and will have a minimum adverse effect on the surrounding neighborhood and community. I therefore move that we approve the petition to obtain a special use permit, and I find that the proposed rezoning request to A, rezone approximately 16.27 acres of land from R3C to C2C, and B, amend the proffered conditions on 32.323 acres of land zone C2C and R3C, are partly consistent with the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan and partly inconsistent with the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan, are good zoning practice, and will not result in substantial detriment to the community. Accordingly, I move that we approve the rezoning requests as they have been requested, with the following amended proffered conditions to replace the previous proffered conditions from September 2022 on the entire 32.323 acres subject to this petition. Number one, the townhomes and two-story storage building shall be developed in substantial conformance with the Edgebrook Park Overall Development Plan, Exhibit B, dated March 22nd, 2024, prepared by Balzer and Associates, Incorporated. No grading or development shall take place in the areas designated as existing vegetation to remain as buffer, stream buffer, or area to remain undisturbed as shown on the Edgebrook Park Overall Development Plan dated March 22, 2024, prepared by Balzer and Associates, Incorporated. Development of the remaining vacant areas of Commercial Area A and Commercial B shall be done in accordance with the applicable Roanoke County development regulations at the time of development and restricted to the uses stated in proffer number 3. Number 2, the maximum building height for any structure shall be 45 feet. Number 3, the property shall be limited to the following uses: Commercial Area A, mini warehouse, self-storage only. Commercial Area B, office uses, general office, medical office, laboratory, commercial uses, personal services, restaurant, general, no drive-through, retail sales, veterinarian hospital, clinic, and mini warehouse, self-storage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There being a motion, is there now a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mrs. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one second. Anyone here need a break?
They can survive.
Okay. Need a break?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, this time we'll move on to our next hearing under item N2, the petition of Ramses and Jessica Sandoval to obtain a special use permit to operate a short-term rental on approximately 0.3794 acres of land zoned R1, low-density residential district, located at 5207 North Spring Drive, Cadama Magisterial District. The chair recognizes Philip Thompson, Director of Planning, and before I forget, would the clerk make note that this is item number 2 and not 1 as shown on my copy? Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you mentioned, the Sandovals are looking to get a special use permit for a short-term rental. The property is located in the North Lake subdivision off of North Spring Drive. It's 5207 North Spring Drive, 0.3794 acres. It is a single-family residence, and they're proposing to get a special use permit for a short-term rental. A couple photographs. This is the front of the house from a couple pictures of the sides of the house. As you can see, they have a pretty good driveway, so they have enough parking space for anybody who would utilize the short-term rental. A couple photos of the backyard and then the back of the house. A couple photos of the interior of the short-term rental. It is the lower level of the house. Kind of a great room picture here. Kitchen and bathroom, and the 2 bedrooms. And the layout, so it is, a living room or great room with a fireplace, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a utility room, and a kitchen that would be part of the short-term rental. As you're all aware, short-term rental is defined as the provision of a room or space that is suitable or intended for occupancy for dwelling, sleeping, or lodging purposes for a period of fewer than 30 consecutive days in exchange for a charge for the occupancy. And there's other short-term rentals that are defined in our ordinance that aren't part of this definition. Standards, they have to obtain a zoning permit to provide information about the parcel, the applicant's name, address, and personal contact information, and name, address, and personal contact information of the authorized party responsible for resolving any complaints, if that is different than the applicant. If for some chance the property changes hands, then the new owner would have to get, or any of the information changes, they have to let us know within 30 days. Change of ownership, the zoning permit expires. The new owner would have to get a zoning permit as well, and then the zoning administrator has the ability to revoke the zoning permit if they are not in compliance with the county's regulations. In the R1 and R2, we require a special use permit if the property is less than 5 acres. So obviously this is less than 5 acres, they need a special use permit. Existing zoning, it's R1, it's surrounded by R1, it's middle of subdivision. Neighborhood conservation, again, where they want to keep it as a single-family home. It is consistent with that because it still maintains the appearance of a single-family home. Again, Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 7th. There were 2 citizens who spoke during the public hearing. The first citizen had some questions regarding the impact to real estate values and insurance rates, the vetting process that the applicant has for renters, and he'll go into that. Safety and the extent of the special use permit, that it only applies to this one property. The other citizen who spoke in support of the special use permit request. So the Planning Commission discussed the property owner's vetting process for renters, the number of overnight guests, that no complaints have been received from neighbors. The property owner lives on the upper floor of the house with his family. The special use permit conditions that we have in place, and the surrounding zoning and future land use. So as you all had a joint work session with the Planning Commission, we've added some additional conditions as part of the special use permit process, and this is actually the first one that has this. So the Planning Commission does recommend approval with 7 conditions. One is that the short-term rental shall be limited to the lower level of the existing residential dwelling, which is approximately 1,800 square feet. The number of overnight guests shall not exceed 6 people. That 1 off-street parking space shall be provided for each guest room. In addition, 2 parking spaces required for the principal dwelling. All parking shall be provided on site and shall be located in driveways and other designated approved parking areas. 4, the property owner shall provide and maintain in good working order every smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, and fire extinguisher required by law. Exits required by law shall not be obstructed. The property must maintain a residential appearance. No signage shall be allowed with the short-term rental use. 6, no events such as parties, banquets, weddings, receptions, meetings, or similar events shall be allowed with the short-term rental use. And then 7, a business license shall be obtained from the Commissioner of Revenue for the short-term rental use. With that, if you have any questions of me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions, Mr. Thompson? Ms. Hooker.
So this is also in the Catawba Magisterial District, and I just have a couple of quick questions before we move on and potentially hear from the petitioner. But do you know how long this has been operating as a short-term rental? Do you have any idea?
I want to say 2 years.
2 years, okay. And let's see, have we received any negativity from any neighbors, any complaints?
No, if you look at the application, he had gotten letters of support from 4 adjoining neighbors.
I saw that.
I believe. So he went out and talked to them. I knew about it. The guy that spoke at the public hearing, it had been running for a year before he even realized it. And then, he realized that and was very supportive of it as well.
That's all I have for staff.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. I do have one question, Mr. Thompson. Maybe the petitioner can answer this if you can't.
Sure.
I noticed that in this petition, the Planning Commission recommended 1 parking space per bedroom, which means I think there'll be 2 parking spaces.
2 bedrooms. They have 3 accommodations.
Sure.
So I think they have in the living area, they have a couch that could be used by children to sleep.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. This time, are there any questions for the petitioner, or does the petitioner wish to address the board? Welcome.
Good evening, Supervisor. Appreciate you taking the time for this. Just to give you kind of a background, and want to kind of make sure that you guys understand too. We have been running this for 2 years. When we did receive the letter saying, "Hey, you got to do something here, right?"
Oh, you got one of those, did you?
Yeah, we pretty much, my wife and I, we said, let's stop this and let's just go through the process. I didn't know it was going to take so long, but we're here now, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. I believe that I've tried to take as much, as many ways to kind of mitigate risk for not just my family, but also with my neighbors as well, letting them know what's going on. So I hope that, it is approved, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to kind of address them.
Any questions for the petitioner?
I don't know that I really have a question at this point, but I did want to thank you for getting those letters of support. I thought that that was very meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? Okay. At this time, thank you. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone here to speak? No one here to speak. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. And at this time, I'll ask, is there a motion on the petition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as I said, this is in the Catawba Magisterial District. This is an owner-occupied short-term rental, and I was especially pleased with those letters of recommendation from his immediate neighbors. There were 4 that he attached to the petition. It was very attractive, very well kept, and with that, I'll go on to make my motion to approve. I find that the proposed special use permit meets the requirements of Section 30-19-1 of the Roanoke County Code, and that the proposed special use conforms with the standards set forth in Article 4, Use and Design Standards of the Roanoke County Zoning Ordinance, is in conformance with the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan, and will have a minimum adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood and community. I therefore move that we approve the petition to obtain a special use permit with the following conditions. Number 1, the short-term rental shall be limited to the lower level of the existing residential dwelling, approximately 1,800 square feet. Number 2, the number of overnight guests shall not exceed 6 people. Number 3, 1 off-street parking space shall be provided for each guest room in addition to parking spaces required for the principal dwelling. All parking shall be provided on-site and shall be located in driveways and other designated approved parking areas. Number 4, the property owner shall provide and maintain in good working order every smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, and fire extinguisher required by law. Exits required by law shall not be obstructed. The property must maintain a residential appearance. No signage shall be allowed with a short-term rental use. Number 6, no events such as parties, banquets, weddings, receptions, meetings, or similar events shall be allowed with a short-term rental use. Number 7, a business license shall be obtained from the Commissioner of Revenue for the short-term rental use. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Radford, any discussion on this motion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mahoney.
I'm going to support this application, but I want to make a few comments to distinguish this application from several of the other applications that we've had before us that this board has denied. And I think it's important to articulate these distinctions of what we have here. North Lakes is, in my opinion, an intensely developed residential subdivision. And it's very similar to many of the subdivisions in Cave Spring District. And so that's why I see this as comparable to some of the actions we have taken previously. But if you look at this lot is 0.3794 acre. Many of the lots in Penn Forest, for example, are maybe 0.25 an acre. So this lot is about 50% larger than some of the other lots that we have denied applications for. Secondly, the applicant has established this process for off-street parking. And again, if you recall, some of the other denials that we've had lots of traffic, lots of vehicles parking on street that has caused problems with neighbors. And I applaud the applicant. They're looking at off-street parking, and I think that makes a significant difference in terms of potential adverse impacts to neighbors. Third, most importantly, it's owner-occupied. And if Mr. Sandoval has a problem with people in his basement or his lower level, he's going to solve that problem.
That's right.
And that's a fundamental difference with some of the other applications that we've denied. Finally, I want to applaud the applicant. Once they received the notice letter, they came in and they promptly proceeded through the process. They've done the right thing. I apologize it's taken so long. That's government. But I applaud you, sir, because you did the right thing and you did it promptly. And I think those elements, at least in my opinion, are significant differences to distinguish this application, which I hope will approve, as compared to some of the other applications that we've had over the past several years that we've denied. And I think these are criteria that we can look at for future applications as we go forward. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? I'll just add to that. I think the Planning Commission, I could tell from not only this, but some petitions coming down the road that some of the items we discussed recently as a month or two ago seem to be coming through in some of the conditions. And I think that that will make for a better product in the long run. With that said, there'll be no further discussions. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mrs. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes, thank you. Item O, citizen comments and communications. Are there any citizens waiting to address the board that have not submitted a form? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, then we'll move on to item P, reports and inquiries of board members. Mr. Radford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one item, and yesterday, Memorial Day, that's when we honor the sacrifice of men and women that have fought for our country in the name of freedom. And I want to just honor and pay tribute to my Uncle Waverly, who I never got to meet. He was killed in a Japanese mortar attack on the island of Guam in the summer of '44. But that's not the rest of the story. I really owe my life to him because he set in motion before he left to go overseas. He told my grandmother and grandfather, Papa and Mama, that if I don't come back, you need to move the family out of Yukon, West Virginia to a bigger town so they can all the other kids, 8 other kids, Waverly was the oldest of 9, and they honored his request when they found out he had passed away. It took them until 47 to finally move to Roanoke, Virginia. And my father, who was the 3rd oldest, went on in the Korean War, came back to Roanoke after the Korean War, and met my mother in a church in Roanoke, Virginia. And so that was the start of the Radford family, the 4 of us. So what Uncle Waverly planted that seed. So I guess the point of the story is there's a relative that had an impact in your life, and there's one to talk about. It's Uncle Waverly, and I know I'll see him one day again in heaven. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Shepherd.
Well, I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight, and I want to take a moment, and I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. I was appointed back in January, as most of you know, and after being appointed, I received a phone call. There were a total of 9 applicants, and I received a message and a call from a certain gentleman that was congratulating me. and his name was Eric Russ. And he went on to tell me, after seeing him here at meeting after meeting, that he was going to run against me, potentially, if I made it to the November election, as a Democrat. He went on further to announce his candidacy, and I have seen him, like I said, at multiple meetings, always nice, always speaking, always sat up here on the first row, and has consistently been to all of them. We just recently found out at our last meeting that he unfortunately passed away very unexpectedly, and I just wanted to take a minute to bring him up and mention him and let his family and everyone know that he was very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And I think long-term, had he been able to stay around with us, we would have seen him a whole lot more and potentially probably bypassing all of us and heading further on up the ladder. He had a lot of aspirations. So I just wanted to take a minute to remember Eric Russ.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very nice. Ms. Hooker.
Just a couple of quick items. I was able to go on a business appreciation visit the other day with Carly and Joe, and we went to Salem Animal Hospital. We had a really great visit with Dr. Richie Bryant. We toured their new facility, and it was just really a great visit. I believe they are the longest continuous serving veterinarian practice in the valley, and they really have a great practice there on West Main Street in the western part of Roanoke County. I wanted to thank Supervisor Mahoney for your details on short-term rental approval versus denial. That was well done, and I think you were spot on those articulations. And then I also just wanted to have another word of appreciation for Alexander Boone and John Luger for what they did, and which I think was a very difficult thing to do, to face the people who were very much against your petition originally, to turn it around and bring a petition that was approved and welcomed by the citizens of that community. So just another thank you to them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Hooker. Mr. Mahoney.
Tammy, I didn't know you were going to compliment Mr. Russ. That was very moving. My wife and I were at the Grandin Theater this weekend, and up on the marquee above the Grandin, they had "We Miss You, Eric Russ."
Oh, wow.
Last Thursday, to follow up Ms. Hooker, again, pursuing Roanoke County's attempt to appreciate our small businesses in our community, Carly and Joe visited Press, which is right around the corner here on Starkey. We talked to Greg and the owner, and I think he has either 23 or 26 employees, and they're just doing a great job. But again, it's one of the small businesses that I think it's important we celebrate. You know, it's easy to celebrate Mack Truck or Wells Fargo. I think it's something different to go out and meet with a lot of the small businesses in our community. And so I want to applaud him and what they're doing and their successes. But I also want to thank our Economic Development Department that they're going out and arranging these meetings in each of our districts so that we can support and reinforce the small businesses in our community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. A couple of comments. On May 23rd, as one of the two representatives of the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission monthly meeting, we adopted the FY25 budget of $4.7 million for the organization, which derives most of its revenues from the counties all the way from Allegheny, Clifton Forge, Covington, all the way to Franklin County, and the regional FY25 work program. And some examples of what's in the work program, just to show you the work that the commission does. They're going to update the regional TED study on transportation and economic development, which I know Mr. Kaywood, as well as I and Mr. Radford, are appreciative of, because that's something that evolved, I guess about 7 years ago, and it's a great marketing tool to not only to share with the Commonwealth Transportation Board, but the other representatives of this area that serve us in the General Assembly and in Congress. And they're also going to do a truck parking study. That was requested from Roanoke County. Glade Creek Greenway Phase 3 study, and a regional impact study for greenways. That is the economic impact that greenways have, and I think they're enlisting the help of Virginia Tech on that too. So I'll be anxious to see what that number is. Lastly, they're going to update the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which Mr. Mahoney is a member of that committee, and that's necessary to have that updated so that we can get economic development administration requirements, but also federal grants can be considered. Very important. And this morning I got a report on an early call they had with the Secretary of Finance in Richmond, the House Appropriations Committee, and here's some bulleted information from that. April revenues for the Commonwealth exceeded forecast by $162 million. Did we exceed our forecast by $162 million? I hardly think so. On a year-to-year basis, revenues are $1.2 billion ahead of forecast at the state level. Collections are 5.4% ahead of forecast. Withholding exceeded projections by 4% year-to-date, and corporate tax collections continue to slow, but with strong growth for the first 6 months of the fiscal year since last July. Slowdown in hiring nationally is noted. 3,400 jobs were added in April in the Commonwealth of Virginia compared to 18,400 in March, and inflation is hanging in the Commonwealth at 3.6%. April results and initial May results continue to show good performance. I got to tell you what, I compliment the state on being strong, but I got to tell you something right now. They're using a lot of people's money with these strong forecasts exceeding what they budgeted. And so good fiscal management, plus or minus 2% is always hoped for, but these numbers are off the charts. There's plenty of money in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I hope that much of that comes back to the citizens of the Commonwealth one day in the form of tax reductions, because I know I write my share of checks, and so do others. With that said, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor? The clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mrs. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Absolutely.
Mr. North?
Yes.